I think my advice would be you really don't know what you're doing. I was really full of myself, and I really thought something inside of me was the solution to this business thing. I was like, I've got it figured out. I don't know what it is yet, but it's going to manifest itself, right?
Yeah.
And that never happened. And I think I would go back in time and be like, hey, just like humble yourself, like ask people questions. You really don't know what you're doing, and that's okay. So just ask people questions, like go and ask questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Own the Exit.
Own the Exit.
I'm here in the studio with Aaron, our co-host. What's up, Aaron?
What's up, Caleb? Just excited to be with you guys for another episode of Own the Exit.
Own the Exit. We were joking before that we're the #1 podcast in the world.
Yeah, I think we made another joke that we're like the #1 in the Solomon Islands.
Yeah, that was a couple weeks. Yeah, that was a couple episodes back.
But truly, though, we are top 40 entrepreneur podcast in the U.S. So
100%.
I was kind of surprised we made that, but thank you so much.
We've been staying in that spot for a little while, too.
Yeah, and then that's a lot of that. It's just the reviews of people who have been, listeners who have been reviewing the podcast. So super appreciate that because that helps algorithms and everything. Bumps us up to the
it helps us reach more people with the message of Own the Exit. So we're super grateful for that. Hey, I want to introduce our guest, Aaron. We got Joel Friedrich in the house today. What's up, Joel?
Hey.
Joel is the founder of Notion Coffee and Prefix Coffee. Prefix is the retail. Notion Coffee is the wholesale. They produce literally some of the best coffee in the world, in my opinion. And I'm actually kind of a coffee snob in some ways. I've traveled to some of the top coffee destinations in the world and drank some of the best coffee.
I have too.
And I put Prefix up there with the best. And so,
Absolutely.
Joel is not only an amazingly talented coffee roaster, barista, but he's also a tremendously gifted entrepreneur who has built a very successful company that is even now currently facing some challenges. And one of the conversation we want to have is how he has been able to position his company in such a way to be successful despite the challenges that are, underlying in one part of his business. And so I'm excited. We were happy to bring him on. He's actually in the studio with us. What's up, Joel?
Hi.
Welcome to the show, man.
Man, I'm so honored to be here.
That's
Seriously.
so awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's so cool that you're here local in Kansas City too, because I just love it. A lot of our guests are all over the country and everything in the world, but to have you here locally and be right here, face to face.
It's nice that you guys office out of the coffee shop. Basically.
A lot of
the office at the coffee shop.
So
That's
I
true.
To see you guys.
I do work at your coffee shop.
Yeah,
frequently.
Zoom calls, all that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
good. It's good. Come on, well, man, just take a second and introduce yourself to our guests. I know I hit some highlights, but man, I'd love for our listeners, rather not guests, our listeners to get to know you a little bit, hear a little of your backstory, how you started your company, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man. It's a very interesting story. I mean, I'm really really honored to be here with you guys. And I was talking with you, Caleb, and even just thinking, I don't necessarily even consider myself a successful entrepreneur, but I think you corrected me on that. And you're like, no, look what you've been able to do. And so I've actually been reflecting on that and so evaluating the business and what I've been able to do based on the things that are very important to me. And so anyway, my introduction to coffee and to business was really, I was working as a barista at a coffee shop here in Grandview. I mean, we're not in Grandview right now, but just south of Kansas City. And I was working as a barista, and this company was ultimately, they were failing. But the shop was so cool, and it meant a lot to the community. And I was like, no. And my brother and I were working there. We're like, no, this means so much to us personally. I would hate to see something come in here and just change that, So long story really short, we got some family friends together and some investors and bought it from them. And so at age 23, I was kind of handed the keys to hey, see if you can make something of this coffee shop. And I've got no business background. I've got no real coffee training. I mean, it was just thrown together.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, here's how you make a latte, kind of a thing. But I was ambitious as all get out, and that was in 2014. So we're coming up on 10 years of like going at it, and ultimately the lesson I learned for the first like 2-3 years was we failed at that location. Like we closed our doors after 2 years. Because I mean, I was hitting my head against a brick wall trying to figure out how do you do this thing called business, and in the context of a coffee shop, and we had a passion for coffee, we had a passion for people, and luckily we failed at that location, but we got another opportunity, so we moved into to another space where this nonprofit kind of gave us an opportunity. Said, hey, we've got built-in, like this location's built out for this. We've got built-in traffic. Do you want to come in and do coffee? And that was a lifeline for our business. And so we scaled down and we had to let go. I mean it was a small operation, but I mean people were relying on us, and it was the first time that I had to let people go, and it was challenging. It's really challenging there, but we downsized, and then from there we were slowly able to work our way back up. And I mean, we started we vertically integrated by starting to roast our own coffee, and we also, I mean, with that you get a much more, you get control over your own product. So and then from there we started to expand locations, and so we at this point are at, I guess we're about to open our fifth location, which is insane to say.
Man.
That's awesome.
Wow.
It's really weird.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Where's the fifth location?
It's at 12th and Grand.
Okay.
Downtown Kansas City.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very
Near
cool.
where the new stadium's going to be, right? Close to
Yeah,
that?
yeah, just north of that. Yeah, we've been working on that one for a long time. Ultimately building out a new, like a shell,
Yeah.
and a sky-rise apartment complex, and they got like, I don't know, something like 400 tenants or whatever.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're in the lobby, and it's got like
They
a
got to go past you every
drive-through
morning
spot
and
as well.
they're like,
Yeah.
We
So-
should buy the apartment building.
go for it.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, great. Problem solved.
Yeah, that's it.
So so I mean that's a very, very condensed. I mean there's so many directions we could go. I mean depending on whatever. But I mean yeah, I mean that's I think a very short version.
That's
Oh,
really
that's-
cool.
Yeah, no, super cool.
I guess just I thought I had, and you kind of introduced it with there's Prefix Coffee, right?
Yeah.
And then there's Notion. So
Yes.
the Notion is more of the roasting company. That's something that's more nationwide.
Mhm.
What's the, I guess I'm just trying to think from like a branding standpoint, why separate those, right?
Oh totally.
I'd love to hear kind of the thought there with why not just Prefix everywhere,
No, totally. I think honestly if I were to go back, I'd probably do that. I'd probably change it.
You would have Prefix?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in fact we've received like business counsel from people who really know what they're doing, like have been doing, are billionaires or whatever, and they're like, why do you have two? Like that doesn't make any sense. And so hindsight, it probably should have just had one name. The way we arrived there was the name that we had originally when we got into the business from the very beginning, 2014. The name was Cafe Maine.
Okay.
We just didn't change it right away.
Okay.
The thought was, let's get into it, and once we have a little bit more capital, like once we've got traction, we can rebrand and establish our name. Well, it just didn't happen in that enough time. By the time we did rebrand, we had already developed a roasting program under the name Notion, but we had kind of different plans for what we wanted to do with Notion. And so ultimately we ended up with these two brands, and we've justified like, you've got the front facing, and they're different branding. You've got totally different branding elements and vibe, I guess.
Sure.
And we've just kind of worked with that.
I actually like it.
Yeah.
It
You
has
have the ability to scale that Notion company,
Totally.
and let's say Prefix, I mean, not that this is going to happen, but ceases to exist,
Yeah.
Notion can still grow
Yeah.
and be successful, kind of.
Yeah.
So no, that I was just curious
Well,
on
well,
how
it's
you
fun-
arrived at that. You know.
Yeah. It's not like there's nothing really super like smart about it. It's just like
That's
we
how
kind of
business
fell
is,
yeah.
right? You always just kind of figure out. I guess
If
this is what
it
I'm
works
doing
to our
now.
benefit, then we like, oh yeah, totally, we knew, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But when it doesn't, we're like, oh shoot, you know. So
None of us have it figured out. It seems like
We
we just
really
kind of figure,
Do not.
just fall into something, and I guess this is what I'm doing now, and this is the plan all along,
know.
but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So man, we were chatting before we started the show, and we were talking about these like kind of anchor business, like when you own a retail location, right? You own this retail coffee shop,
Mhm.
right? And maybe some of our listeners, they own maybe a coffee shop or a restaurant or like a retail, like a shoe store or something like that, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times those types of businesses do well when anchored to or tethered to like an anchor like presence,
Mhm.
in the same shopping center as like a Walmart or something like that, right? You've got like Walmart, and then right next to it you've got the shoe store. And the shoe store, the reason it exists is because of the traffic that Walmart generates.
Yeah.
Right? And it's kind of, benefiting from that. And that's kind of when you guys pivoted from Cafe Maine to Prefix in the new location with the nonprofit.
Mhm.
That's kind of what happened,
Mhm.
right? Is like you
Definitely.
kind of got anchored by this built-in traffic, right?
Yeah.
But now, that nonprofit organization is in some restructuring and things like that. And
Mhm.
so there's some challenges that
Definitely.
your retail side of your business is facing, question marks, that kind of stuff, right? And so
Yep.
what are you doing in terms of thinking about, separating your brand to a point where like it's standalone, right? Because you got like Starbucks, which is
Mhm.
like obviously the epitome of success in
Mhm.
coffee, even though their coffee itself is not that
They're
great.
not good at coffee.
Right.
They're not great at
But
coffee,
they-
but they're
but
good
they-
at business.
No
But
comment.
exactly. They're not great at coffee, but they're good at business. They're great at
Excellent.
business. And so they have these Starbucks locations that are standalone stores that are not necessarily attached to anything,
Mm.
right? Now they're smart about it. Like it's like they're going to put it in areas where there's people driving and
Yeah.
looking and stuff like that. But so I'd love to hear your two thoughts, and I know we were talking about this before, but your two thoughts is like what are you envisioning for Prefix,
Hmm.
the retail location expression?
Yeah.
And then how have you been able to kind of build this other kind of tandem brand Notion along so that you sort of protected, your overall business to where you can just go all in on the wholesale and on the
Yeah.
roasting, and that's not affected by the
Definitely.
anchor tenant, right?
Yeah.
Or the anchor business around us. So just talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, it's looking back on it, I wish I could have prepared for one of these black swan moments of like,
Mhm.
oh, the thing you never prepare for
Yeah.
and never think about. Oh, it can happen. The anchor can fail or can restructure, right? And so we didn't. I think hindsight's 2020. So I'm looking back, going, you know what? That was I want to grow companies that are resilient to this type of the very possible and plausible outcome. The things that you don't envision, which I think really does tie into like own the exit, like planning your exit and planning for bad things to happen.
Yeah.
And how are you going to mitigate that?
Yeah.
So I think definitely like with the Notion brand, in the United States I can ship coffee anywhere,
Mhm.
I can ship it anywhere in the world. So I want to grow a roasting company that's not reliant on what happens locally,
Mhm.
but really in this digital age, I can put up, as long as I can ship things, then I can really be as rural as I want.
Yeah.
And send things out from there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And coffee is, I mean, I don't know if it's officially classified as a commodity, but it might as well be,
Mhm.
right? Because like people are not going to stop consuming coffee come what may. Like
They really
like
won't.
like it's recession resistant
Yeah.
class of product. Like
I mean,
people
they still drank it during the Great Depression.
exactly
They still drink coffee.
People drink coffee. Like they're not like they're people are not going to stop buying shampoo. They're not going to stop buying eggs and
Mhm.
milk. They're not going to stop buying coffee.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it's I think going all in on that, it just makes so much sense,
Mhm.
and how it just already feeds in tandem with the retail business.
Mhm.
And it's like if one fails, this one's not going to. You
Right.
know what I
That's
mean?
why I think it's actually cool to have the two separate brands. But I mean, those are just my thoughts. You know, I know you said you kind of stumbled on that, but I
Yeah.
think it's kind of cool. I guess a question I had or thought was like, what are you doing, or what are your thoughts? Because I think this is really applicable to people in a lot of different industries. Like with coffee, it's like there's a million sources of coffee,
Yeah.
right? So how are you, I guess, differentiating yourself?
Mhm.
So you've got Notion, like what, even if your coffee's better, like it's almost like people don't, it's almost like, it's like, it's just like a drug almost, you know, like people are
Yes.
just like, hey, I'll go to Starbucks because it's closer, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how are you kind of, is there a way to carve your own niche, you know,
Yeah.
or get those loyal customer, you know, that base of customers, or how are you able to kind of cut through all of the existing competition that's out there?
Yes. That's a great question. Digitally, we really struggle. It's really difficult. Oh, because then we're getting into marketing, which we're not. Frankly, we're just not skilled at. And we've put energy into different marketing companies, and on and off. And I mean, really, you just kind of need to find one that works and then just stick with it.
Yeah.
And we haven't found that yet. And we've also, I mean, part of that is we've gone through lots of up and down seasons. And so we either put the money into the marketing or we don't, right? So that's something we do struggle with, is differentiating ourselves. I think where we do well is differentiating ourselves from our competitors locally and in person by being who we are, being nice people, and really relating like this to our customers, to our wholesale customers.
Yeah.
And really, I really can't claim like a ton of this, but like our product does speak for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you guys invited me, because
Yeah.
I was bringing you
No.
coffee. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
something that I'm really proud of. Like, it's something I drink and I really enjoy. And so I think it's easy to sell something when you're really excited about it. Like, it's super hard to sell something if you're like, oh yeah, I really hate this product, but I got to do it because it's my job, you know. But it's way easier when I can be like personable about it, and I can share a story with it, and they happen to really like it. Like, it's just a lot easier to do that. I think, but to the digital aspect on when it comes to like reaching a different, further audience, that's been a challenge for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like so much of today's world, you know, the online presence, right? And the battle that can be, you know, and cutting through all the noise and,
For sure.
you know, trying to somehow pierce through all that and be seen, right?
Yeah. It is. And I mean, it's an area that I'm like, okay, guys, it's time to like put on our marketing hats and like just go for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of like, wait a minute, I wish we were more prepared for the trials that we're facing now on the storefront side for our cafes,
Yeah.
but we're not. And that's where I want to be for the next one of these. Right.
Right.
So that's what I'm gearing up for.
Totally. I would say like restaurants, coffee shops, like things that when people start them, they do it. It's like not always about making lots of money. Like there's a passion behind the product.
Yeah.
There's a like when people dream of starting a restaurant, they typically aren't dreaming of starting a restaurant because it's the easiest path to make a lot of money. Like it's really hard. Like the restaurant industry, like it's something like 20% of them succeed and the other 80% fail.
Yeah.
like completely fail. And coffee shops fall into that kind of same
Totally.
trajectory. And so there's a lot of passion behind the product, and what Aaron and I, and anyone kind of in the KC area who has been to a Prefix location knows the product is top tier. Like it's the best it's some of the best coffee you can get in the world. But like it's still amazing that how do you get someone in, New York to order your coffee every month?
Yeah.
Like they gotta have that almost like, and that's kind of the storefront model introduces people, and then then they discover it and they want it for themselves. It's like my wife and I love another coffee shop in Nashville called Crema Coffee. I don't know if you're familiar with them, and we've ordered their beans like tons of times because we just love their coffee so much.
Yeah, and
it's like. But the reason we did that is because we had the experience in the shop, right? And so,
I think that's one. And we were talking kind of about this split brand thing. One of the things that actually harms us, there's not that continuity between like a one localized or unified is a better term, a unified brand, cohesive brand where you went to Crema to the store. And then you're like, oh, man, and they've got Crema coffee, so I'm going to order this online as well.
Yeah.
So that I'm curious how much we're missing out on because of that. And we've talked extensively, our team, about like, man, we've got so-and-so working on this, and this person's doing this. Like, we would free up so much of our like energy and time if we just had one cohesive brand.
Yeah.
And so that's a conversation we've had a lot of, like, actually just because that whole conversation started because of a video I watched with Alex Hormozy.
Oh, wow.
That was just like, do one thing.
Do one thing.
And just do it really well. Just focus on that.
Focus on that. Yeah.
Which I could talk a little bit about how we've done the opposite of that.
Sure.
I mean, in some ways. I mean, there's some things that I'm really proud of that we've done. Like, we incubated a bakery, like Fox and Bull Bakery. Like we found these guys. They started working for us baking, and really it was like Prefix Baking Company. And then they had such, chemistry that they were like, we want to do this ourselves, and we want to go out and do this. And we're like, dude, that's great. Like, wait till you get to the point where you can do that, and then we'll like send you off and like go and do well, and we'll partner with you. Like, we'll use your product once you leave. So that was really rewarding.
That is really cool.
It's really cool
developing those people and having them go and do it.
Because like you said, it's the success rate of this type of business is really small, and the prospect of being able to like help these guys get like a leg up. It's like, hey, like what you're doing is really cool. Like, let us help you get like a little further down the road before you just like jump into like a ton of debt and a ton of risk. Like, we'll be your customer. And
so is that kind of maybe some of the advice that you would give like a young passionate entrepreneur that wants to break into the food service, coffee shop, whatever space, is like, look for ways to do it? Like, I think of like a lot of like, there's great restaurants, for example, like in Kansas City, there's this place called Sura Eats. I don't know if you've eaten there. It's a Korean bowl place, and they started as a pop-up. No, like very low overhead. They get other businesses to let them come in, serve their food once or twice a week in different places. They build a following with no real risk capital other than the food costs and their time.
Yeah.
Right? They build a pop-up, build a brand, and that's kind of what Fox and Bull, like you guys allowed. It was just a kind of like a permanent in-house pop-up where they,
totally.
That kind of thing. So how would you advise maybe other entrepreneurs who are interested in the food service, coffee, restaurant type space to strategize around launching their business in a way that kind of ensures a higher likelihood of success?
That's a really good question, man. Because I did not recommend it to everyone.
Right.
Because it's super risky.
Mhm.
And especially with this type of industry, like specifically restaurant industry, you're going to be putting in long hours. If you want to be a family man,
Mhm.
like, sorry, you're just gonna have to find a different like field of work. So
Yeah.
really, I would ask them hard questions that are like, what are your expectations, and what's your background? Like, what have you really done? And then I would really just say, like, ask a lot of people a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the powerful things about questions. Like, people who are in, whatever positions, like, questions are just so easily answered and accessible,
Mm-hmm.
and they're extremely powerful. Like, people, and they're not going to charge you for their time,
Right.
generally.
Yeah.
And I think I'm kind of getting into, you kind of ask a question that is on the exit round, but that's one of the things I would have said to a little bit is to myself, like, just ask more questions.
Ask more questions. No, it's really cool, and I really think, like, I think that's awesome. Aaron, did you have
I mean, I just had one other kind of question, or I guess thought, or wanted to get your thinking on was just the idea of, like, the team, the culture, right? Like, within the coffee, you have your coffee shops. Like, what are some tips, or like, you've hired a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those people, maybe don't stay for a lifelong career in this type of industry,
Definitely.
right? They stay for a season at a time, and then maybe they move on to whatever's next. So there's that transient nature.
Yeah.
How do you, I guess, attract people, and how does that? What are your thoughts on kind of maintaining that culture when is like there's turnover and different things like that?
Yeah, it's a challenging. That's one challenging dynamic. I mean, it's just for me, it's just par for the course. Like, okay, the industry I'm in, I'm hiring young individuals who are like, ooh, it's going to be cool to be a barista. And I know they're not making their career with me. And that's what I got. And that's great. And I've seen it, for the past, decade that I've been doing this, I've seen where companies, hold tightly to their employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to leave, they'll make you feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to hold you close, and they're trying to, like, well, why, and when I first saw that, I was like, man, that, like, I don't want to be around that, and I don't want to do that. And so I decided to go the total opposite direction. I was like, hey, you guys can leave. You can leave whenever you want. Like, it's inevitable anyway. Like, it's not like you're telling them something they don't know.
Right.
Everybody knows they can leave whenever. And so I do my best to hold people open-handed. Like, I know as a barista, you're not making your career here. Like, but while you're here, for the 6 months or 12 months that you're here, like, I hope that you grow. Not only, like, I'm going to give you skills. Like, yeah, sure, I can train skills, no problem. But I hope you grow in your character.
Yeah.
Like, that's far more valuable to me, and that's a metric of success, in my opinion, as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
If they've come under my leadership, and after 6 months, like, they're leaving, they're going on to get a better paying job, and they've grown in character, that to me is success. Like, I know they're going to be leaving. So and any time someone's like, hey, they're coming to me, they're ready to, like, tell me I'm going to quit. I'm really sorry, I'm going to quit. I'm like, every time, oh, I'm so excited for you. Like, genuinely.
Yeah.
And it's changed. It's just really just changed things for me. And it has
so good
multiplying effects on our culture. Because then our culture, people want to stay. I've had people on numerous occasions, and we are not competitive. Well, like, our pay is not competitive. You can get paid a lot better at almost any other coffee shop. But people return.
Yeah.
I've had people go, they're working some other shop, they're getting paid more, and then they go, that really didn't work out, like, the culture and da-da-da. And they're like, will you please take me back? I'm like, absolutely. Like, come on, So that has to me is super valuable. And it's one of the things I'm like most honored by and proud of for what we've grown in the past decade.
Yeah, the culture is so important. Like, and it's, it's a reflection of you, but it's also, I've heard Dave Ramsey talk about, you have to concretely establish culture before there's more of them than there are of us. So what he's referencing is like, if a company grows really fast and doesn't have like a clear like culture established that they also then can like infuse into their employees as they come on and like say this is the culture, then eventually once you have more of them, new people that have rolled in than of us, people who like just naturally exude this culture, then their whatever culture they bring is the culture that's going to be infused into the business.
Yeah.
And so being really intentional about culture is, I think, one of the most important pieces of like owning your exit, right?
Which I would add for us that we had a pivotal shift with our ownership in 2020, the beginning of 2020. And when we finally rebranded to Prefix, that was one of the elements that we brought in, is ironing out a true, like, this is our culture. And I remember we sat down with all of our current employees and we're like, guys, here's our culture, here's our values. If you are not walking forward, if you're not progressing in these values with us, then I'm sorry, but you don't have a place here. Like we have misaligned values at that point.
Right.
And so you can find a job somewhere else.
Yeah. And
that served us really well, especially when it comes to needing to make changes. When you need to address something, and if you don't have mission, vision, or values, then it's kind of like you're kind of judging them against an ambiguous sort of like, well, we kind of want you to be this. If you don't have something that you can say, you're acting this way, which is in contrast to our values. If you can't stack it up against something, then you have less to say.
Then it just feels like you're just prioritizing your personal preference rather than just saying, hey, this is our family, this is what we're about.
Totally.
No, I love that so much. Company culture, family culture, like
it's
being
so
really
huge.
intentional about that. So
just on the, like during this time of talking with you, just of having the other bakery that kind of developed with you, and then you like blessed them, right? To like go and then with the employees too. I think that's such a good principle. Like, even if you are paying them a ton of money, it's that same concept though of like having that open hand and being like, hey, what value can I add to you? And obviously you want them to, add value to the company too and work, because that's why you hired them, is to do a job. But and I've said that to people that have worked for me, and even just conversations with other business owners too, like, maybe this is just a stepping stone to whatever they're going to do next, but how can I, help them in that? And if you like truly want to do that, I think it's so rewarding, right? Like, of course we all want to make money and be successful with financially, but at the same time, it's like we're working with people every day. Yeah. And so I think that's really cool that you highlighted that as like that recurring theme of trying to add value to people throughout, your business.
100%.
So.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been such a good conversation. I think added a lot of value, a lot of relatability to our listener base. So, man, I really appreciate that. We're at the point in the show where we're going to jump into the exit round. It's the last couple of minutes. We asked every guest the same 5 questions. So let's start. Dive into the exit round. Question number 1. What is your all-time favorite business book?
I wrote down a lot because I was like preparing for this.
Yeah,
we sent the questions in advance.
Well, I had to study for this, man. I can't just come in.
That's awesome.
I think I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember which Dale Carnegie book it is. Whether it's How to Win Friends.
Shoot, that book is good, man.
There's one key takeaway that was basically you can control nothing in your life except your attitude. And to me, that's just like so pivotal, especially in times that are really tough. Like I can choose to have a good day, or I can choose to have a bad day. Circumstances are always going to be up and down.
Yeah.
But I can actually choose, no, I'm going to have a good day today. And I've really bought into that mantra, and it's really shaped, I think, the way that I perceive the world around me. So
super good.
Yeah.
We ask this for every guest, because as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we're all about like passive income and things like that. So what percentage of your income would you say is fully passive? So
this is an easy one for me, actually. 0. There's been different. I mean, I'm totally on the bandwagon. I managed some of your properties. I just was thinking about that the other day. I was like, oh yeah, I've managed some of Aaron's like townhomes like years and years ago.
Oh yeah, you used to be like a leasing agent, right?
Yeah.
Or
So I
manager?
have my license. Like I have my real estate license here
Yeah.
in Missouri. But so there's been times where I've like really tried to jump in that, and ultimately at those times I was like, I can't juggle this and what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
So for the past number of years, I've got to focus on this until it arrives at this place, and then I can take a back seat and really like let someone else drive the vehicle. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, no, that's good,
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's one thing you wish you could do more of, but your business responsibilities hold you back?
Oh man, I really enjoy. Well, I've had the idea of doing a podcast for a while too, so I love this. Is super fun, but also just hearing other people's stories, and it's a great way to relate to people and to grow.
Yeah.
I mean, so that I also just like, I just love helping other small business owners. Like I'm really scrappy.
Yeah.
In the business, I'm like so pretty cheap. But
yeah.
I've had to do a lot on a shoestring budget, and so because of that, I've delved into like niche things that business owners typically don't do, and I spent a whole week like learning WordPress or something. I was like, this was probably the wrong idea, but so I know a lot about. I know a lot about several niche things, and I've seen it add value to my friends' lives. And so I wish I could do more of that.
Yeah. I love what you said there, because I've heard, I think it's Craig Groeschel in his leadership podcast talks about one of the key drivers of innovation is a lack of resources.
Yeah.
Like if you lack the money to throw at a problem, then you got to get creative to solve that problem.
Yeah.
You got to get innovative.
Which is crazy because, I mean, COVID, that's a great example for us. That was really challenging for us.
Of course.
And there's been another number of other challenges that we've had in our company where we just had to hunker down and we can't do this the right way. Yeah. But how do we do it? We need to do it. So let's figure it out. And I've learned so much through that.
Yeah, I feel like there's two different pathways of success rooted in the Rocky storyline, right? Like there's like the Clubber Lang that the pathway to success is, just knock it out of the park in the first 3 rounds, just knock out your opponent. And then there's Rocky that's just like, I just take a beating and I just keep getting back up.
Yeah.
And I think more entrepreneurs are like that than like Clubber Lang, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like you're like scrappy, Rocky. I've faced COVID. I've faced all these different things, but like you just keep thriving and keep surviving, keep figuring it out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
4th question: if you go back in time and talk to your younger self, right, like 18-year-old Joel or something like that, what business tips or advice would you give to your former self?
For sure, my advice would be, because I got into this young, and I think my advice would be, you really don't know what you're doing. You don't have, I really thought, I was really full of myself, and I really thought something inside of me was the solution to this business thing. I was like, I've got it figured out. I don't know what it is yet, but it's going to manifest itself, right?
Yeah.
And that never happened. And I think I would go back in time and be like, hey, just like humble yourself, like ask people questions. You really don't know what you're doing, and that's okay. So just ask people questions. Like go and ask questions.
That's good. That's good.
It is good.
Come on. So, last question. What's your strategy for creating time freedom and financial freedom for yourself and your family? Give us 1 or 2 strategic or tactical tips.
Man, family is super important. It's so important. Yeah. For me, there's certain things that I will not do when it comes to the business. I will just like, nope, like we will, like if we cannot do that, like I will suffer money there over like sacrificing time with my family because that's blocked off, that kind of thing. Yeah. So ironing that out and making sure my partners are aware of that, like people I go into business with, like, hey, this is a non-negotiable, you know? So that is super important. Another thing is like, man, my phone can be such a distraction. And I've sworn off certain apps for years. Yeah. Because I found in my downtime, if I give it an inch, it'll take a mile. More than just my time, but like my entire mindset. Yeah. And so I've really got to cut that off, especially in downtime. Like one of my favorite quotes, I think it's Jim Elliott, is wherever you are, be all there. And I really, it's not easy, but I really try and embody that and embrace that mentality, like being 100% intentional, not distracted, not on my phone, not, whatever, but like when I'm home, like with my family, like I'm attentive and I'm present. Yeah. So
it's tough to do, man.
Extremely.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were in with one of our other guests in the debrief after the show. We were just talking about this guy Bedros Keuilian, who has this like question you ask yourself, like, is your head where your feet are?
That's good.
And just like having that, like asking yourself that question, like, is your head where your feet are? Like, are you mentally present with where you're at? And it's just a great philosophy to live by. Like if you're at work, in the office, doing, building your business, whatever, like be there, be all in to that. But like when you're with your family, be all in,
Dude, absolutely.
And so, yeah. Well, man, it's been awesome having this conversation.
Thank you guys so much.
And yeah, we're gonna keep rolling up into Prefix, and would love for you to let our listeners know whether they're in Kansas City or whether they are, we have listeners all over the world actually. Yeah. But how can they, number one, how can they order Notion coffee? Because if you're listening to this right now and you like coffee at all, then you should go immediately right now and order a bag of Notion coffee. Like it's going to be worth it. So tell them, how do they do it, Joel?
Wow, man, this is like you set me up for the biggest home run right here. Our website's notioncoffee.co.
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 Notion is spelled Notion, for those non-grammar spelling people.
Way to go.
.co, not com, so leave the M off.
Com was more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So. It's all about, splitting pennies here. Yeah. No, it's so good, man. Joel, again, thank you for jumping on the show. It's been awesome having you.
I really appreciate you guys.
Any final words, Aaron, for our guests before we sign off?
Just, it's great having you. And I think just my big takeaway, I already kind of said this, was just like the value that you have for people and culture. And I think that's huge, because we can lose sight of that with business. It's all about money and cash flow. And we're trying to like make ends meet and pay bills and all this stuff and exist and survive. But like being like, okay, there's the people, right?
Definitely.
And the value and without people, and people are everything, right? Yeah. And so just maintaining that came through a few times throughout this interview, for you. So I really love that. So, and that's applicable to any business, if you're a $1 billion company, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That value for people and that culture. So yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks again for tuning in for Own the Exit. Let's go. Hey, if you liked this episode, just share it with a couple people in your network who could benefit from it. And if you haven't already subscribe and leave us a review. It's the only way that we can grow the show and continue to reach more people with the message of Own the Exit. And so if you do that, that'd mean the world to us. That's all for now. Until next time, Own the Exit.
Thanks, guys.